24 in the United Corporations of America. Delighted to be joined, unshackled by the confines of a short segment last week. Steve Grumbine, Real Progressives, Macro and Cheese, Rogue Scholar. I mean, too many things to list. Definitely check out and subscribe to Real Progress in Action. Definitely go to realprogressives.org. Correct?
Yep.
All the links are in the description, and we'll promote it later as well. Steve, we were going to start with Kamala price gouging, but I got to start with breaking news in the never-ending genocide that we're funding. Before I get to that, please smash the like button, folks. Share this live stream. Couple housekeeping notes. You know, what did Ferris Bueller say? Sometimes you just got to take a pause and look around or something. We're at 206,000 subscribers. It was almost 5 minutes ago. We passed 200,000. So YouTube, it's too good to be true. I don't believe it. YouTube seems to be allowing some growth now. But now we're at 206,000 subscribers. Thank you to all our new subscribers. I've been seeing comments of folks just saying, oh, I just found your channel. So welcome. We're the only channel I know of that consistently is on the ground across America. Have an idea for another reporting trip I want to take in September, but we're going to need your support, including more paid members to do that. So I'll talk about it a little bit later. So smash the like button, share this live stream. Super chats appreciated. I'll read them at the end. So obviously the Gaza genocide was erased from the DNC programming schedule. We could get into that. But there are now reports that Israel, how kind of them, how generous, is going to do a temporary ceasefire. I don't even know if this is accurate because we've heard a lot of stuff about temporary ceasefires. Temporary ceasefire in certain parts of Gaza has reportedly been approved in order to distribute polio vaccinations. Announcement comes as Israel launches a mass assault on the West Bank. Before we get to the mass assault on the West Bank, I don't even know if this is true. Let's just, because a temporary ceasefire could also include Israel still, taking out Hamas terrorists and bombing camps. But
at elementary schools and hospitals and stuff.
Right. But how ironic, they're going to give you polio vaccinations to only then kill you, a couple of days later.
Zionist logic, brother. Zionist logic. What can I say?
So for what it's worth, that's what the media is reporting. I would take it with a grain of salt. But there is a big polio outbreak among famine and other horrible things in Gaza. And now, I guess, while Israel is temporarily, vaccinating people in Gaza, they're doing an all-out assault in the West Bank. The West Bank hasn't gotten a ton of focus because obviously the mass killings have been going on in Gaza. But there have been people who have died since October 7th in Gaza, West Bank. And now, if you have that, I texted it to you, Colin. I don't know if you have it. But Israel has gone into the West Bank. Israel imposing a siege on Jenin Hospital, cutting water pipes in Tulkarem. Settlers are invading the Al-Aqsa compound. This is a full-scale assault on Palestinian lives and sacred sites. I don't know what the stated rationale is of Israel. I don't really care. So I can't tell you why they are going into the West Bank, but they are going into the West Bank now. Reports as of 2 hours ago, I saw that 10 Palestinians were killed, which we're just so numb to this. 10 Palestinians killed seems like a low number, but still 10 Palestinians killed, probably more. So this is all going on as Kamala Harris was heralded. I don't know if you saw during Kamala Harris's speak when she offered the, just token rhetoric that we must end the suffering of Palestinian lives. The camera panned and Spike Lee cheered like, yeah, we got it. She kind of like
nailed it.
She nailed it.
Stuck the landing.
She dropped the line. Nothing about like, we're going to do an arms embargo or stop killing innocent people. But she got that. But I want to show this clip. These were the type of speakers that the DNC would not allow on stage. They wouldn't even allow a elected Palestinian on stage from Georgia, state representative, I believe, in Georgia, who would have provided the speech to be vetted and actually wanted to endorse Kamala Harris. Could you go figure? They wouldn't even allow that. But Colin, let's play the clip. We posted this earlier. This was from a press conference at the DNC. John Farina was everywhere. He was on the streets covering protests, press conferences. God bless him. He sent me a picture actually over the weekend to kind of unwind. He likes to go camping. And he sent me a picture of him with a whiskey bottle and my book by a fire. And I said, I appreciate you reading my book, but do the whiskey first. You need it. Anyway, let's play this clip. This is an emergency room doctor who's been to Gaza twice from Chicago and the horrors she has seen.
Based here in Chicago, and as Hatem mentioned, I have been to Gaza twice now in the last 6 months. I just got back 3 days ago. As an ER doctor, and as one of the few humanitarian aid workers that Israel is allowing into the Gaza Strip, I have had a front row seat to the violence that Israel is enacting upon Palestinian civilians in Gaza. I specifically want to mention the crimes that I have seen. Crimes against children, crimes against civilians. In my time in the Gaza Strip, every single day, we would see evidence of deliberate targeting of civilians. We would see evidence of targeting. We would receive injured people from so-called humanitarian zones, from safe zones. There is no safe zone in Gaza. Israel has made sure of that. In the span of a few days in the ER at Nasser Hospital, I saw horrifying injuries that indicated deliberate targeting of children. I saw a 19-month-old girl who had been shot in the leg by a quadcopter while she was playing outside of her family's tent. This was witnessed. I saw the injuries myself and I documented them. In the span of another day, I saw a preteen boy come into the emergency department carried by his family, who was living near Nasser Hospital, who had been shot through the left side of the chest. One single shot. That indicates a deliberate targeting of this child. The next day, I received a 19-year-old male who had been used as a human shield by the Israeli army, and when he was released by them after they ensured that he was walking through Khan Yunis and Rafah all day, after he was released and walking away from his captors, he was shot in the right side of the chest. The evidence is incontrovertible. It is obvious and it is clear, and it has been clear for the last 10 months, that Israel is using US-made weapons to target civilians.
I want to just juxtapose that, Steve, with this clip to show you the sickness that is our corporate media. And this might make you fly off the handle. So we just saw an emergency room doctor who 2 trips to Gaza. She's got no reason to fabricate or lie. It's not just her. There's been other brave doctors who have been shut out, not just from mainstream, not just from the DNC, but from mainstream media. So there is a genocide going on and also a media blockade for the most part. But Colin, if you have this clip, it's in there. Let me find it. It's the one CNN discussing how VP Harris handled the uncommitted delegates.
Kind of navigated this at the DNC, which is to say they didn't broke any of it. And in fact, when Susan Rice was talking with my colleague Jake Tapper about the uncommitted faction, they were delegates who were uncommitted to initially Biden, but also Harris. And she basically said, okay, it's a little bit rich that people who aren't not committing to Harris want a piece of the stage at her convention. But it seemed very clear to me they wanted to send a strong message that they were not sort of engaging in this really, while at the same time making sure that she took a tone in her own speech that was different from where Biden was on this. How did you look at all of that?
Yeah, I think that the vice president has shown a strong vision for how to resolve this current war, a call for a ceasefire exchange for hostages, a strong argument for supporting Israeli security, as well as for Palestinian self-determination, ultimately two-state solution. It's hard to understand what more people could want out of a presidential candidate. That was the most forward-leaning speech I've ever seen at a convention, and I think the crowd responded. The crowd responded as well to her calls for Israeli security. And the folks pushing Uncommitted also had a lot of behind-the-scenes engagement with the campaign. They had official events at the DNC. They were in touch directly. They did move the needle on much of the rhetoric. So that's a win. Take the win. I'm not sure why they're not saying we support you, and now we're ready to do more. It seems like a little bit of an own goal, quite frankly.
Jesus Christ.
What more do you want, Steve? Thoughts?
Dude, I can't even really, I can't amp up the way I know that my traditional rage goes. When I see this, I don't know whether I'm more angry at them for saying this bullshit for everyone to hear, or the freaking circus seals that arp and clap like hyenas for this kind of pathetic trash. I mean, since October 7th of last year, it's been a daily deluge of nonstop murder, slaughter. It has been a nonstop funding, just a big, huge fire hose of funding from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to make these things happen. For them to act like they are not directly responsible, like they're literally the ones holding the gun, and acting like they are, what more could you want from us? We're doing everything we can to stop it. Stop sending them fucking arms. Stop sending them fucking bombs. Stop fucking filling up the military coffers of Israel. Stop allowing this to happen and stop lying. But the reality is, the more you get into this, the deeper you get into this, the more you realize this is fucking theatrical. There's nothing about this that is real. There's not real reporting. The only real reporting comes from channels like yours, Jordan. This is fake news. This is literally manufacturing consent.
Well, the only real reporting is the journalists that are Palestinian in Gaza that have been killed, and Israel won't let other. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I am not volunteering to go report in Gaza, but those that have can't get in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but you understand, though, that the people themselves in the United States have to be able to have enough power and strength and conviction to fight back against this administration and make them stop doing it. Unfortunately, the dullards out there are so struck with Trump derangement syndrome that they can't fight back. And this is why a Democrat in office is always the greater evil. Even though I absolutely despise the Republicans, I despise Democrats that curry favor and protect and run, subterfuge and block, the truth while they're in office. There's no such thing as pushing Biden to the left. There's no such thing as pushing Kamala Harris to the left. These folks will literally suckle down, throat every bit of man meat they throw at them when this bullshit comes out. And they sit there and they act like you're the crazy one, and they will literally revert to form saying, what do you want, Trump? That level of just mind fuckery is, and that's why I'm blaming the people on the television. That's why I'm blaming the asshole that was, what more do you want? Because they know damn well that the vote blue sycophant cannot help themselves but repeat establishment bullshit. And this is the way the narrative will go. And so the chances of stopping the actual slaughter are next to none, because Kamala Harris simply will not she's already said, I will not put any conditions on defending Israel. I will send as much military shit as we want to. Nothing is going to change in that respect. So until they stop giving them the weapons, all this shit is just a bunch of bullshit. Every last drop of it.
The other line that stood out to me, he said, they had a lot of, behind the scenes events at the convention. So they were part of the convention. Well, they're not part of the convention if it's behind. That's like Office Space, which, if you've seen Office Space, they put the guy in the basement with the stapler. That's kind of what this is. But to me, the thing about this that is just so striking is there's this juxtaposition. I think it's Li Fang reported that essentially the DNC and the Democrats were literally paying like TikTok influencers at the DNC. So giving them, suites for free at the hotel, giving them all sorts of goodies, boat tour, the architecture tour of Chicago, these TikTok influencers that reach a lot of young people. Because in the DNC's mind, that will help sway young voters to come out and vote for them. Not really realizing TikTok's one of the most passive platforms out there, and people are just floating from video to video. But they're not whining and dining. They're not doing anything about all the young people outside protesting, not just in Chicago, but all over the country. I mean, John Farina has covered over 80 protests. And I could tell you cumulatively, you're talking about tens of thousands of protesters around the country. And it's not just young people, to be clear. They've been joined by people of all ages. But the majority, I would say, are young people. Those people might make the difference. But the DNC is so arrogant and so tense and so disconnected that they think, if we could just get the TikTok influencers and pay them off at the DNC and give them some nice gift baskets so that they can say how great everything is. But at the end of the day, this is kind of the alternate reality that has been formed when you have bought off media from what's actually happening in reality. Because the reality is Marianne Williamson, obviously her campaign never took off. Some of it was her fault. A lot of it was the media blackout. But she said something that I think was true. We as Americans have such low expectations of our government. We're willing to accept crumbs because we've been conditioned to think we could only get a little. And that's what you get when they're trying to gaslight you into thinking improved rhetoric is a win. Improved rhetoric is something concrete. I interviewed Farah Khan in Dearborn. She's with the abandoned Harris, was abandoned Biden, now abandoned Harris. And she said, more empathy is not going to stop the killings. It's not more clear than that. More empathy does not stop the killings. And I think that it is very clear. It is very clear. I'm not going to tell anyone how to vote, certainly not Arab Americans. But it is very clear that the Democratic Party and their consultants and their pollsters have basically said there's more Republican swing voters or there's more swing independents than Arab Americans or young hippies out there for Palestine. So just virtue signal and, sound more sympathetic, but you could still win even if you are complicit in this. And she can do something. To be clear, Biden... Remember when Obama was president, Biden went on Meet the Press and this is not the same thing as a genocide, but he went out in front of Obama and said, I'm for gay marriage. Obama didn't know he was going to do that. Everybody was shocked because this is like Catholic Joe. And he went out and said, I'm for same-sex marriage. And that actually kind of dragged Obama because he went out and disagreed with his sitting president. Kamala Harris, if she wanted to, could say, I respect President Biden, but, as president, I would immediately do an arms embargo. She's not going to do it because, and this is the first time we're talking since this happened. I don't know if you saw Chris Cuomo's segment where
go ahead.
It's pointing to the boxes. Well, I would venture to guess there's donors sitting atop the United Center, the DNC, like Haim Saban, net worth $3 billion. If he's not in the box, he paid for one of them. And Jeffrey Katzenberg, net worth $900 million. Ardent Zionists who are purchasing the politicians speaking on stage. That's, to me, why they wouldn't have a Palestinian speaker. And frankly, no disrespect to Uncommitted, I think there should have been a Palestinian speaker. But when the DNC has that as the thing we're fighting over, rather than, we are not going to vote for you if you do not announce a policy change or pressure President Biden now, we're in trouble. I just think we're spinning our wheels, and this is going to go on because Israel's government is different than us. It's a parliamentary system, and I think the Prime Minister of Israel has every incentive to continue this on for years and years, unless there's one politician in America with power that actually executes some bravery.
150 Bush and McCain aides came to the fore to sign off and support Kamala Harris. Okay. 150 Republican people in, AIDS, high places, people that are in the inner circle, if you will. This is no mistake. The idea here is 100%. There is one uni party. Trump is kind of an outlier, but he's still doing the same shit. And then everything is against the left. Everything is against the left. But I'm making more out of that than it really should be, because quite frankly, I don't believe, short of being in the streets.
It was the same thing for Hillary, by the way.
Yeah.
A lot of.
I don't believe we have any way of impacting this whatsoever, other than when, let's fingers crossed, college kicks back in and the kids get back to encampments on campus. That's the hope that we have, because I can tell you right now, people aren't, there's too many people that literally watched Harris's acceptance speech and watched Walz and got wrapped up about, his special needs son. And look, I have a special need. I have a child that's autistic. My son started crying and wanted me to do well. I'd be all broken up. It would touch my heart too. But this shit is going on, is all theatrics. And there is no democracy here, folks. Just please do me a favor and don't sell me any more of your democracy. This is not democracy. Okay. Kamala Harris could not even get a single freaking delegate when she ran for president, but now she's going to run, and she's got the full support of the establishment DNC. Okay. This is not democracy, folks. This is not democracy. Don't lie anymore. Wake up, smell the coffee. This is not democracy. So the idea of thinking you can vote this thing out of existence or vote this other thing into existence is ridiculous. It's not happening. You're not going to make fetch happen. It ain't happening.
And I got to be honest, I was kind of surprised. The New York Times, of all places, gave more of a platform to a Palestinian voice than the Democratic Party. I say that because they're basically one and the same. I'll read some of this. This was a New York Times op-ed. This is who Kamala Harris fails. It's by Dr. Alian, who is a clinical psychologist in New York. She's a Palestinian. And this part I thought was pretty damn illuminating. And, credit to the Times, at least for this. The Democratic National Convention was a visually and sonically arresting display full of bright-eyed, stirring speeches on race, identity, democracy, including a moving speech by the parents of an Israeli hostage and talk of social justice and liberation. It began with a land acknowledgement, which was quite ironic. And yet the word Palestine was only held briefly in the mouths of non-Palestinians. Mentions of a ceasefire in Gaza were urgent but vague, as though one would be midwifed via fervent prayer rather than the sober reconsideration of our nation's active participation in funding of the current onslaught. My strong guess, Steve, total speculation. My strong guess is she wrote current genocide and they edited it to onslaught. Just my guess. Anyway, the most generous read of Miss Harris vis-a-vis Palestinians is that she has inherited versus had an active role in a disastrous foreign policy on Gaza, and now must contend with hundreds of thousands of ambivalent voters who oppose it. There's no doubt Ms. Harris is more articulate than Biden on the issue. In her speech accepting the nomination, she spoke of Palestinians' devastation, of their displacement, their hunger, their right to freedom and self-determination, she put in quotes. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking, she said. I appreciate her heartbreak. What I'd appreciate more is a direct naming of who is killing and starving Palestinians, acts that are neither inevitable nor without a perpetrator. I'd appreciate the upholding of international law through sanctions and an arms embargo. It's hard to abide the passive framing of Palestinian death in the same speech that reasserts a nuclear power's right to defend itself, a, quote, defense that in the past few months has included both American and Israeli representatives calling to level Gaza, mobs rioting to defend the rights of soldiers accused of raping a Palestinian prisoner, and bombs shredding hundreds of starving children in refugee camps. The thing that is so incredible words, by the way, by this psychologist. The thing that's so interesting about this, she's talking about, I'd appreciate you naming who's doing the killing. That's what the New York Times is always criticized for. Their headlines say, 20 people die in Gaza. Was it a meteor? Was it a tsunami? Yeah. But Unfortunately, I don't think this is going to change. And I will say, I try not to give like direct guidance to activists because I'm not an activist. I'm a journalist. But you and I have talked about this, Steve. The protests are going to start. College campuses are opening up again, and this and that. And I would just encourage, whether it's young people or other forms of activists, BLM, climate, Medicare, whatever. You got to look at what you've been doing, be proud of what you've been doing, but you got to always be ready to be flexible and change your tactics. And been going now for 9, 10 months, and it's the status quo. So if your body's on the streets, if the speeches, if the chanting, although it's admirable, is not really a threat, it doesn't seem, to the powers that be, you got to roll out new tactics. And I would submit, I would start with your money. Not that college students or young people have huge consumer power, but enough that advertisers want to target young people. And I would start talking about economic actions you could take, however small or big, including boycotting the Amazons of the world, the Walmarts of the world, taking your money out of corporate banking, rent strikes if you can get enough, a couple thousand people, because the act of protesting, although it is great, capital does not concede anything without actual demands, and with those demands have to come an economic threat, I believe. Real quick before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, you look back in time at what labor has done when they go on strike to do direct action against their corporation, not just marching on the picket line and blocking people from entering the building, but they do other actions. And I think that if you look back in time, that there's a blueprint for things that we can do. It needs, to me, anything that is not coordinated and visible for people to see. I mean, like visible, not just token acts of, hey, I'm not going to shop at Amazon this week. I mean, really, truly visible acts that draw awareness, because that's what this whole thing is about, is drawing awareness. We're up against tremendous amounts of propaganda, as you know. So without bringing huge amounts of awareness, I mean, I think you have to consider, what does capital, require the most? It requires free roadways to bring goods and services back and forth. It requires internet. It requires electricity. It requires transportation via trains or roadways. There's all kinds of places there, all kinds of choke points that well-trained, organized activists can consider to be fertile ground for making a stand. And I think that most of them know exactly what I'm talking about. You saw some of this out there in LA on, I think it was the 405. You saw people blocking traffic, making life very, very challenging, and given an actual spectacle, something someone has to pay attention to. You just got to understand that the police aren't Mayberry RFD anymore. They're coming in there with tactical gear. They're coming in with, they could be in a war. They're coming in fully armed to the gills, and they've got lots and lots of padding on. So whatever you do, be prepared to meet much resistance, and be prepared yourself to spend a night or 2 or 3 in jail. I mean, there's got to be organization. There's got to be coordination, and it's not going to happen, crying or wishing it away or hoping it away. Unfortunately, it takes actual unification and purpose. And I think people are too scattered. And I'm hoping that somewhere there's organization out there that can pull off the kind of coordinating that is required to make a dent. Because right now, people are going to die and continue to die until we risk some stuff, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Remember, smash that like button. Almost got 300 people watching. More people that press the like button, the more people that will see this. Please subscribe. Like I said, we just passed 200,000 subscribers. We're now at 206,000, actually. And reminder, as we head into Labor Day, my book is out there now. You could get it in a lot of bookstores. You could order it online. I'm doing an event with Crystal Ball in D.C. on September 8th at Busboys and Poets at 7 o'clock, I believe. So if you're in the DC area, I'll be there with Crystal Ball speaking about my book. Also have some other things in the works about the book. I will also be calling out media pretty soon, including our own independent media, for basically, for their own selfish purposes, not having me on the book, or at least covering the book. not for my own benefit, because like maybe you should do a, I don't know, 5-minute segment on the biggest government cover up of the 21st century, i.e. the Flint water cover up that, by the way, is still killing people. We're talking about genocide in Gaza. We're talking about slower moving genocides all happening in America. I can't even tell you how many people are dying as an effect of this water in Flint, Michigan. So thank you to everyone who's gotten the book. I've gotten a lot of great emails with reviews made directly to me. If you can, leave a review on the Amazon or Barnes & Noble website under the book. That kind of helps. But the link is in the description. I really hope you get it. I know Steve's been reading it very studiously.
Let me plug this real quick. I had Jordan on Macro and Cheese this past Saturday. It came out. Check out the episode with Jordan. It was really good. And last night we had what we call Macro and Chill every Tuesday night, where we got together to discuss it. So, 20 or so people got in there and we're actually actively discussing what was going on. So great book, and we're trying to support it the best we can for sure.
Absolutely. So I want to move on, and sorry to keep taking a pinata to Kamala Harris. We'll do Trump another day because he's been doing some interesting things too. But, Kamala Harris, it was very interesting because she's kind of been running a paint your own canvas campaign. I am whatever you want me to be on policy, which kind of was eerily similar to Obama, if you remember, but everybody was drinking, including me back then, the hope and change juice. But Kamala Harris, she was criticized for having no policy. Then she kind of came out with this vague, I'm going to ban price gouging policy, particularly in the grocery industry, which all sounds good. She didn't really give any details per se, but I'm gonna ban price gouging. Well, apparently her colleagues, her Democratic colleagues, are laughing behind her back on that. Just kind of, Kamala, that's. Hold on, let me just read it to the audience so they know what I'm talking about. So this is from Politico. Hill Dems try to tamp down backlash to Harris's grocery price gouging plan. So this is going on right now. Under pressure to defend Harris's grocery price gouging plan, some Democratic lawmakers are delivering a quiet message to anxious allies. Don't worry about the details. It's never going to pass Congress. The Harris campaign's proposal, unveiled as part of her first big economic speech policy, has become a focal point for her presidential rival Donald Trump and fellow Republicans who claim she's pushing communist price controls. It has also alarmed food industry officials and even some left-of-center economists who have warned such policies could hurt more than they help. While much in Harris's price gouging plan remains vague, a central piece is simply a call for Congress to pass the first ever federal ban on price gouging in the food and grocery sectors, which largely mirrors legislation Elizabeth Warren proposed. But such a bill has no chance of passing Congress anytime soon, which is basically what corporate Democrats are telling worried donors at the moment. So that's why when we say this is all theater, folks, it's all theater. And we're going to discuss the merits of what she's proposing, which I don't think she would follow through on. Remember, Joe Biden ran on a $15 minimum wage, a public option, banning drilling on public lands, et cetera, et cetera. We have a filibuster in place for a reason, because the donors want it. The donors that purchase both parties, they want gridlock. They want Congress to basically move at a snail's pace, because then nothing fundamentally changes for the worst for them. So Biden could say, it's because it's a Senate norm. The filibuster is not in the Constitution. It has no bearing. If it was, we should amend it. But it's not in the Constitution. But it's one of the core reasons nothing fundamental changes. But I'd love your thoughts, because first of all, my thought was, okay, bravo that you want to do price controls on the food and grocery industry. I think that's great, even though she provided no specifics. But why stop there? The biggest price gougers over the last 4 years was the fossil fuel industry. Everybody felt it at the gas pump. Why are you just targeting the food and grocery industry rather than the fossil fuel industry? Why is it any less egregious to price gouge if you're the pharmaceutical industry? It's kind of the same nonsensical, hey, let's brag that we capped insulin at $35 for seniors. Okay, so if you're 64, fuck you. But if you're 65 and older, come on in. So I think it's a good policy, even though I don't really know what the policy is. It's just vague. But it's also absurd, the Republican nonsense about, communism. Please, Your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I hate Kamala Harris before she even takes office. If she takes office, I can't stand her for so many reasons. I mean, I've ranted about them several times. I won't force you all to hear me rant again about them. But on this particular thing, even if she's disingenuous, even if she's a complete economic illiterate and moron, which she really is, the policy that she's talking about is actually pretty good. When you go to the economists that I frequently talk to and follow and look at, before Kamala hopped on this bandwagon, a lady named Isabella Weber, who has been front and center with talking about the sellers inflation that we experienced through the pandemic. They isolated a lot of monopolistic practices during that time period. But if you remember, there were companies that were making 900 to 1,000% profit, had increased their profit over 1,000% during the pandemic. And what they're talking about is taking laws that are already on the books in various states that that don't allow corporations to use natural disasters as a veil to jack prices up. Okay, this is not the same thing as price controls, which I support that 100% also, by the way. But in the terms of actually not doing price gouging, this is something where what they're saying is, hey, listen, if you exceed a certain threshold during a pandemic or during a crisis of some variety or another, the state has the ability to review and make you defend the reason why you raise prices. If you raise those prices, you know, trying to gouge, they're going to slap you down. They're going to fine you. You're going to do something. Now, whether or not this is part of her plan is to be seen. I don't believe she'll do any of it. I don't believe that the Congress will do any of it. I don't believe anything that will benefit the people will ever make it through. And if it does, it'll be so watered down that you won't really notice it, but they'll have a really cool name on it. And everybody said, well, don't you remember when she passed the Inflation Reduction Act? Or, you know, there's some silly name that they'll put to it that'll resonate with, you know, the seals that arp for it. But in reality, though, the plan, this anti-price gouging plan, is something that good economists that I know and believe, even if they have shitty politics, they have great economic understanding. And Isabella Weber, who is someone who has shitty politics, but she has a great understanding of economics. I mean, this is something she's been working on for quite some time. So if you want to find out more about this, if you can stomach the Kamala, you know, love fest, her economics are rock solid.
Well, you know, what's amazing about this is obviously we don't think she's actually going to do anything about it. But at the end of the day, all these people, Democrats and Republicans, their religion is the free market. The free market. Well, it's the antithesis to the free market if companies are artificially inflating prices, not based on their own increased cost, but just as what did he say? Jerome Powell told Elizabeth Warren, because they can. That's not the free market. The free market is supposed to be based on supply and demand and other, you know, measurements and trends, not just, you know, for-profit companies just because they can get away with it. Price gouging. I also don't like the fact we're putting aside the fact that we don't actually think she's going to follow through. Right. Why is this only exclusive to crises that we're going to slap down companies? Like, technically, we're not in a crisis right now. I mean, they say COVID is over, even though I don't think it is. So you're only going to do this during a crisis, but at every other point, you know, grocers, fossil fuel companies can do whatever they want. So I think there's a lot of holes in her supposed proposal. And by the way, states, on the state level, many states have, including red states, by the way,
that's right,
have laws on the books to review if companies are wrongly doing this. Apparently, that's not communism to Trump and others. This would be.
Well, think about this, right? This is for a national level thing that would allow them to go after multinationals and global these corporations, these monopolistic corporations, right? But I want to say something. There was a comment in here that said, hey, if you're going to just bust on the Democrats in the video, don't forget to bust on the Republicans. Let me just explain something to you. And I'm really sorry for those people that feel the need to even say something like that. Go read the Washington Post. You'll hear all you need to hear about Republicans. Go read CNN. You'll hear all you need to know about Republicans. Go hear MSNBC. You'll hear nothing but about Republicans, how bad they are. You'll hear everything. You will never hear a single negative word about the Democrats. So if that's what you want, my God, just turn on mainstream media and you will get it in spades, okay? There is nobody at all critiquing the Democratic Party inside, if you will. There's no one doing it. And as a result of that, really horrific things are happening right under your fucking nose. Okay. If you want that balance, if you want all that balance, okay, whatever. Truth is truth. And the truth of the matter is that right here, right now, you've got an incumbent administration that is funding a genocide. What do you want me to say? You want me to make it up? You want me to say Trump's doing it just to give some faux balance? No, fucking Biden and Harris are doing this. When it comes to price gouging, Trump is saying all kinds of cockamamie shit. I'm not chasing that shit around. I don't require a dissertation about how bad Trump is.
It kind of goes without saying, if Trump was in office and this was going on in Gaza, we'd be addressing Trump every day. So
think about that for 1 minute, just 1 second. If Donald Trump had a bad comb over coming off of an airplane where wind swept his comb over, it would be plastered over the news, much less a really dumb tweet. Instant 3 million views because every knucklehead with Trump derangement syndrome will share it. No one, literally no one is. It's like you're screaming into a fucking pillow to make people realize that, hey, this Kamala Harris thing, it isn't the jam you think it is. This Walz guy, he did some cool stuff in Minnesota. It doesn't change the fact that they're straight up fully funding and willing to fund and continue to fund a goddamn genocide. I don't know what you want me to say. If you didn't know the Republicans were the bad guys already, shame on you. I don't know what to tell you. If you require me to go bleeding off about Donald Trump and making some stupid comments about Trump just so you feel some weird sense of equilibrium, that's on you. There's plenty of that shit out. That's all we hear. That's the problem. There's no balance. None. Zero.
I agree. And by the way, if maybe he just doesn't watch this channel, we do talk about Trump. I mean, we criticize Trump. I just personally forget Trump just from the way my brain works. If I'm going to cover someone, I have to do it differently than the mainstream media, or else what am I doing? I don't want to just do the same thing mainstream media is doing. So if I cover Trump, it's not going to be from the same exact drumbeat that you're hearing everywhere else. I want to play this. Colin put together some of Kamala Harris's DNC speech, which, if you just care about optics, good speech, feel good vibes, all that, pretty light on anything having to do with, I don't know, the number one issue according to polls, the economy and inflation. Colin, if you could play that.
Us to make the most of the opportunities that were available to us and to be grateful for them. Because as she taught us, opportunity is not available to everyone. That's why we will create what I call an opportunity economy, where everyone has the chance to compete and a chance to succeed. Whether you live in a rural area, small town, or big city. And as president, I will bring together labor and workers and small business owners and entrepreneurs and American companies to create jobs, to grow our economy, and to lower the cost of everyday needs like health care and housing and groceries. We will provide access to capital for small business owners and entrepreneurs and founders. And we will end America's housing shortage. Now compare that to Donald Trump, because I think everyone here knows he doesn't actually fight for the middle class. He doesn't actually fight for the middle class. Instead, he fights for himself and his billionaire friends. And he will give them another round of tax breaks that will add up to $5 trillion to the national debt. And all the while, he intends to enact what in effect is a national sales tax, call it a Trump tax, that would raise prices on middle-class families by almost $4,000 a year.
Dude, you know how I wanted to explode there? Oh my God.
So Steve, I think I told you this. I loved the WWF when I was a kid. So I came up with Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock. And that kind of reminds me of that because Vince McMahon, obviously he's done some horrible, horrible things that we've learned about recently, sexual assault, among other things. But back in the heyday, I mean, that's what Vince McMahon and these people sat around spitballing, branding and slogans like "Take your vitamins, brother." Hulk Hogan and Macho Man like "Ooh yeah," and Ric Flair like "Woo." That's what they did. There was no there. It was all a show. And I guarantee you there's plenty of consultants and pollsters and advisors around a room coming up with, for an hour. And I got it. Opportunity economy. It's like kind of like the innovation lab you see around like these new, gentrified cities, like the creative hub. That's another phrase. It doesn't mean anything. There's nothing underneath the hood. And by the way, the Republicans do this too. It's not just Democrats, but that is a whole lot of nothing. There's no specifics. Sure, devil's advocate, you could say, well, Jordan, like speeches like this aren't for specifics. It's to show you who you are. Well, who you are is a bullshit artist, not just Kamala Harris, all of them. There's no specific policies. Bernie Sanders, whether you loved him or hated him, it wasn't complicated. Medicare for all, free public college, banning fracking. I mean, very concrete, no room for interpretation, right? Colin, what was it you told me before we went live? You counted, and how many times did she?
She mentioned the economy or the word economy 3 times total in her 40-minute speech. Never mentioned inflation, never mentioned price gouging. What you saw there was the entirety of her any reference really to the economy in the entire 40-minute speech was right. Everything I could find there.
Well, I'll tell you what, Steve. Thank you for that, Colin. I'll tell you what. Gives me Yes Queen Hillary vibes from 2016. Stronger together. With Kamala, we have for the people. I mean, I was at the convention in 2016. It felt great, not for me, but the vibes were great. If you were like, a Team Blue person, it was great. I think Katy Perry performed, and everybody was on cloud 9. We're going to crush Trump. But there was no actual economic policy in Hillary's campaign. And as of now, we're about to hit Labor Day. There's no economic policy other than let's try to raise $1 billion in Kamala Harris's. And for the person who said, why don't you guys hammer Trump? Well, maybe, just maybe, I want to avoid fascism, even though we already have it in America. I don't want it to become worse. So maybe we cover and expose Kamala, because as of now, this is really the only thing stopping full-blown fascism, the white supremacy kind, the Autobahn kind. And I just got to say, I'm feeling 2016 vibes. I don't really care what the polls say now because Trump has notoriously been underpolled by about 3 to 5%. He was underpolled in 2016. He was underpolled in 2020. He got millions of more votes in 2020, even though he lost. So right now, the polls are showing Kamala's up 1 or 2 points in most of these states. That's not enough against Donald Trump. And I'll tell you what, I don't want Donald Trump to be president, but he's going to win again if the only message is Hillary's was love Trump's hate and hers is for the people and opportunity economy. If there's nothing there, I think a lot of voters, particularly independents, are just going to throw up their hands and not vote, because there's a lot of voters who are not going to vote or are going to vote third party because of the genocide. And there's a lot of voters that aren't going to vote because their number one issue is the economy and their wallet, and they're not getting any clear messages from her. And by the way, there are a lot of voters who don't pay attention at all right now, only pay attention a week or two early. And their deduction, I'm not criticizing them, but most voters just think in simplistic terms, well, prices were lower when Trump was president. I don't like him, but prices were lower, so I'll vote for Trump. I mean, that's kind of how I see this going.
Yeah, well, girl boss is going to try to build Trump's wall. That was one of the things that's come out recently. So you could call that part of her economic package. The other thing that she said that was interesting in that little teeny clip, she didn't say a lot, but one thing she did say was, it's going to raise the national debt. It's going to, blah, blah, blah. In other words, they're already starting the austerity train there. And if you look behind the scenes, other Democratic talkers are putting out into the ether that Donald Trump's economic plan will put 5 trillion extra on the national debt. They're fear mongering on the national debt. And this is the pathway, this is the precursor to austerity. Okay, whether you like her or not, the bottom line here is that once you start lying, because the national debt is nothing more than the sum total of the amount of money that the government has spent into the economy that is not taxed out of the economy. That's it. We don't owe anybody anything. We owe them a freaking maybe a statement, a monthly statement on their savings account. That's all we owe on the national debt. And so this ridiculous line of thinking plays well with the right wingers that she's trying to woo, because she's definitely not trying to woo anyone that's even remotely center or left of center, because ultimately she is talking. I mean, if you took away the voice, if you gave her a Ronald Reagan AI voice, you would think this was Reagan. You would literally think this was W. You would not think of this as a Democrat. You would think Ronald Reagan might look more like a communist right now compared to a lot of what she's saying and doing. So the little teeny bits of bites she used were red meat chum on debt and deficits crap, which we already learned. It's not a thing. It's bullshit.
Well, a broken extremist clock is right twice a day. Ronald Reagan picked up the phone in 1982, and he called Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin, and he said, "Stop the bombing now in Beirut. This looks like a Holocaust."
Done.
And Israel stopped the bombing in Beirut. So Ronald Reagan, of all people, had more moral fortitude. I mean, he was a fucking evil douchebag on everything else, but at least on that,
yeah.
He did more than Biden. I want to move on.
Hold on. Hey,
go ahead.
Just to humor me here, Alexander Mershon. Let's put that comment up there.
Steve gets very triggered by the trolls. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can't handle any economic illiteracy. It's important to snuff it out. All the national debt is countries, when they have US dollars, they make a decision. Do I want to bring those US dollars back home for whatever reason, or do I want to put them into a savings account we'll call bonds? Okay, just like if you buy a bond at your bank is not going bankrupt because you bought a savings bond at the bank. Okay, and the US government that creates savings bonds and creates US dollars isn't going to go broke on that either. Okay, it chooses to sell those things. Okay, countries can either keep their money, they can either put it into bonds, or they can go ahead and sell it on the foreign exchange. Either way, that's it. It's that simple. And there's no impact whatsoever. The only thing that has an impact is that countries that have US dollars can spend US dollars. And what do you buy? Things in the United States. So if they want to buy property, they want to buy buildings, you want to buy businesses or whatever, they can do that. Okay. But you can't stop them from doing that unless you pass a law, of course, because they're earning dollars by selling goods and services into the United States. So what do they do with their dollar holdings? I don't know. I use the yuan back home. I use the yen back home. I use the euro. They don't use the US dollar unless they're facilitating transactions between countries. So it's a bunch of bullshit. It doesn't matter how much savings these other countries have in US dollars. Doesn't matter at all. Zero. It has zero impact on your life. Zero.
I'll tell you what does have impact on Status Coup. You. So before our final story, I want to tell you I'd like to get back on the ground in September, specifically to do a swing state tour. So I'd like to get out there, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. I'd also possibly Tina in Arizona, Nevada on the West Coast. But I don't want to go out there to go to diners and interview people about Kamala and Trump. We're not trying to do a swing state tour to do a horse race and who's up and who's down and who's going to win, because what would be the point of that? That's already out there. I'd like to go out there and do something radical in the states that matter. I'd like to interview people about their economic pain. I'd like to interview people about reality, not the horse race, not who's up, who's down, what is it like to be the elusive swing voter. I'd like to interview the people who are trying to find change in their couch to fill up the gas tank, because I've done that. I've had that. I'd like to interview people that are literally rationing medicine. I'd like to interview people that are one paycheck away from homelessness, because you're not going to see that in the focus groups on CNN. So costs money. We are one of the few online independent outlets that is routinely out there. We've covered over 80 of these ceasefire protests. It costs a lot of money. We're talking just one reporting trip for a week costs us $3,000 to $5,000. So if we're going to hit multiple states, I need more people to sign up as paid members. So if you haven't signed up yet, if you're new here, please consider signing up today. StatusCoup.com/join. StatusCoup.com/join. We got about 80 new members during the DNC week. We gotta get a lot more. So thank you if you're a new member. We're going to be doing our members call, our monthly members call after Labor Day. So sign up, StatusCoup.com/join, and you will get a link when we do that call, probably in early September. Steve, you know how all this hullabaloo about democracy?
Oh, yeah.
Well, apparently the U.S. and Canada don't want the country of Mexico exercising their own democracy. A viewer sent me this. Quite illuminating. Mexico pauses relations with U.S. and Canadian embassies. Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, hope I'm pronouncing that right, is halting diplomatic relations with the U.S. and Canadian embassies after their ambassadors criticized his proposal to have judges elected by popular vote. Popular vote? What are you talking? We believe in democracy in America, not the most people, the most votes win. López Obrador announced the move during his daily press conference on Tuesday, saying the pause is with the embassies and not the countries. He said relations will be reestablished once the diplomats are respectful of the independence of Mexico, of the sovereignty of our country. López Obrador's proposal for judicial reform is part of a package of constitutional changes he has been seeking, which have yet to be approved. On Monday, a congressional committee approved the proposal, and it now requires 2/3 approval in both chambers of Congress. The reforms include a range of issues in areas like pensions and the energy sector, but they also include controversial judicial and institutional reforms, which critics say, who are these critics, would weaken the separation of powers and see the disappearance of some independent regulatory agencies. U.S. Ambassador to Mexico Ken Salazar said last Thursday that he believes a popular direct election of judges is a major risk to the functioning of Mexico's democracy. He stressed that judicial reform should ensure the judiciary would be strengthened and not subject to the corruption of politics, with the caveat that, we do know that the cartels and others have had major influences in the past in Mexican elections. They have, showed up with guns at polling stations. They've rigged the vote in favor of their candidates. So I'm not saying that popular elections are always, capital I integrity, but how is the country waxing poetic, us, about democracy is on the line, lecturing Mexico about the threat to democracy of a popular vote election for judges, while our Supreme Court system is literally the Federalist Society, every lobby known to man, pouring money into politicians to enact the most right-wing or left-wing judges. Well, actually, they're not left-wing. They're kind of corporate moderates on the left side. But am I in the twilight? I'm not a scholar on Mexican politics, but it does sound like a good idea to have just popular democracy.
It just cracks me up that we have an opinion on it. It just cracks me up that we even think it's our right to weigh in. Who is the idiot that we have in the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas. I mean,
Mhm.
can you? I don't think he would ever have gotten into the Supreme Court had it been left to a popular vote. I'm pretty sure Roberts wouldn't have. I'm pretty sure none of them. I can't think of too many of them that would have.
This Handmaid's Tale. What's her face? Amy Coney Barrett. Please.
Oh yeah. I mean, just stay the hell out of their business, man. I mean, but at the end of the day, I mean, this is what we do. If we don't like what they'll do, we'll start.
That's the thing. It's
We'll
not
start a
their. We don't view it. The capitalist system does not view it as
That's
their
right.
business. I mean, look what happened. The Iran. We took out Mossadegh in Iran in the 1950s because he was going to nationalize the oil industry. We've been trying to. Trump, by the way, you want some coverage of Trump? Trump tried to deploy a coup of Maduro in Venezuela because he would not, commercialize and give Venezuela's. They have the most oil reserves in the world to America. I mean, we don't actually believe in international democracy of foreign sovereignty if it affects our business interests. And I don't think they like this leftist president. He's a leftist, actually being a leftist. This is a dangerous precedent. And when other leftists have been elected in other parts of the world, suddenly there's coups engineered by the United States. So we are a rogue. You want to talk about a rogue scholar? We are a rogue nation. And I just find it comical, absolutely comical, that we're sitting here saying we think there's a threat if the judge who wins the most votes becomes a judge. That will somehow threaten Mexican society. What a joke. And Canada, give me a break. I mean, Canada just goes along with whatever America says. So, but that's why I tell you, and some people say, Jordan, you're being a little too strong here about when you criticize that we don't have a democracy. It's a lot better here than some third world countries. Okay, well, is that the bar, that it's slightly better here than third world countries? Because when people give me this West Wing fantasy, the TV show, that we have some democracy, I give you Flint, Michigan. I give you East Palestine, Ohio. I give you Love Canal. I mean, Native Americans pushed into open air prisons without electricity and water called reservations. Democracy. We got democracy for wealthy people. What was Martin Luther King's famous quote? Socialism for the rich. No.
Yep. Rugged individualism for the poor, something like that. Yes.
Yeah. So it's all a joke. But I say to Mexico, President, be careful. Have security around you. I'm not kidding. But go as left as the people demand, I say. Amen. In Mexico. Steve, tell people what you're working on.
So we've got a bunch of great podcasts in the works. We do long form 1 hour podcasts. They're edited and so forth, and they come out every Saturday morning on Macro and Cheese. Our organization is currently working to get me back out on video. It's been a while since I've been on video other than on other people's channels. That'll be coming in the not too far off future. We're just not quite there yet. But otherwise, Tuesday nights, we have Macro and Chill, which is an adjunct to Macro and Cheese, where we get together. It's a webinar. I know some of you have been there. We've enjoyed your time. Enjoy you coming back too.
Question from the people. This is a $10 super chat from Teresa. Do we get Rogue Scholar back in the fall?
I sure hope so. That's my goal. My work day has been beating the snot out of me. The time that I usually got in front of the camera during the day has been gobbled up with my daytime job. But I'm hoping that as school gets back in order and life starts taking a little bit more normalcy, that maybe I'll be able to get back in here shortly. That's the goal.
And our friend Kami John, $10. Great job, Steve and Jordan, on the latest MNC. We had a great discussion on Macro and Chill last night. The Chill video replay starts in an hour over on Real Progressive's YouTube. Subscribe. That's Real Progress in Action. That's your YouTube.
No. This one is Real Progressive. So Real Progressives is where the Macro and Cheese lives. Rogue Scholar lives on Real Progress in Action. 501c3 is education. 501c4 is politics.
Subscribe to all Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action, and go get Jordan's book. He's right. He's right. I put my blood, sweat, and tears, and I think I had an interview about my book earlier, and I said, this is not the title Flint. It's about Flint. This is about a really, really sinister, corrupt government. If you want to know how you get toxic water, it's because we have toxic government, and that's what my book reveals, how toxic government created a toxic water crisis that, by the way, is still killing people in Flint. So definitely check it out. We the Poison. The link is in the description. You got to go, Steve?
One
Go
quick
ahead.
thought. I want to say Tanya Princess, she left a comment out there, and I'll read it. She says, "You white leftists and liberals just quoted MLK. Y'all never quote MLK said we're coming to get our check for reparations, American descendants of slavery. Strongly suggest checking out the Rogue Scholar, where I've interviewed people nonstop. We have a bunch of stuff with Sandy Darity. We're on Macro and Cheese as well. That's simply not true, but I understand your statement. We talk about it. You're going to have to pay attention to our channel if you want to talk about my activism. But in the meantime, I appreciate what you say, and I definitely agree that it's not talked about enough.
And by the way, I've been on the road and interviewed ADOS, descendants of slavery, and people who demand reparations. So
Amen.
all good. You might have just not seen it. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Take care,
everybody. Yep.
Want to give a shout out. Kimmy gifted a Status Coup membership. So you are heeding the call. I appreciate that. TNT became a Status Coup member. Really appreciate that. Kat became a Status Coup member. So those are 3 YouTube memberships. I do encourage folks who want to become a member, if you can, to do it through our website. That's statuscoup.com/join. Because when you become a member on YouTube, unfortunately, we don't get your email. And if you become a member on our website, we have your email, so we could email you with updates, including when our members call is. No big deal if you signed up through YouTube. But for those that want to sign up as paying members, statuscoup.com/join through our website. Like I said, we do a monthly monthly call with our members. It's through a similar program to Zoom. But you don't have to be on camera. You can mute your camera and just listen if you want. I take people's questions. We also do behind the scenes videos for our members from our on-the-ground reporting, as well as other things. So membership is how we grow. Membership is how we can continue covering these protests. Membership is how I can get back on the ground for that reporting tour I just told you about that I want to do in the swing states. And membership is how we grow this thing for the long haul. We just passed 200,000 subscribers. I have visions for much bigger than that. I would like to hire more reporters. I'd like to hire more people behind the scenes, but I cannot print money like the federal government. And we just haven't had the funding to do that. And we have not, we don't take money from Norfolk Southern or Goldman Sachs or Wall Street or fossil fuel companies, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, all the rest. Our funding comes from you. So if you can join us, again, statuscoup.com/join. We will be back here tomorrow.
Real quick, got 2 more under the pin section that just came.
Oh, great. MV became a Status Coup member. Thank you. Super chat from TNT, $10. There's no real news without independent reporting. You got that right. And frankly, I think there's a lot of independent outlets out there that have to step up their game. I think they're just kind of getting into that horse race of Kamala versus Trump and, what topics and videos will get the most clicks rather than covering more substantive stories that are being ignored elsewhere. So hopefully we'll get that too. Thank you, everybody, for watching. See